call Tuesday, August 11th, Select Board meeting to order. And the first item is approval of the agenda.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any changes to the agenda? Here, you know, I like this format better. It's really easy to see the board. Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify with a thumbs up. Okay. Next is approval of the minutes of our July 28th regular select board meeting.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any requested changes to the draft minutes? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes as drafted, signify with a thumbs up. Okay. Next is citizen comments, and I'm going to have Heather go through for all of you watching how, with this new format, you can engage with the board. So, Heather.
Thanks, Brian. So the first thing you'll notice if you mouse over your screen, at the bottom middle of your screen, there's a Q&A button. If you click on that, it brings up a window where you can type questions to us. Once we've answered them, they'll move, you know, we can be able to keep track of them in that window. So you can use that question and answer feature. In addition, if you click on the participant button, a separate panel on the right side of your screen should pop up. And on the bottom lower right, there is a little button that says raised hand. If you click on that, it will put a little hand up next to your name that we'll be able to see, and we'll know you're looking to ask a question. So those are two ways that you can engage with us during the meeting. And if you have any issues or problems, you could probably, the chat feature isn't working. So use any and all methods. Ask a question, raise your hand, do anything, and we'll do our best to help you while we're going. Okay? Can you think of anything else, Kathleen?
And Heather, we'll see that on the screen somewhere, so I know.
So you can, Brian, if you click on the participant button,
Yeah.
it'll pop up. You'll see a tab for panelists and you'll see a tab for attendees. Like if you look for panelists right now, see the little blue hand next to my name?
Yeah.
And then I believe if I type a question right now in the, oh, apparently I can't type a question.
Maybe it's only for attendees.
That could
That's
be.
right.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
board
they-
members can't.
They can at least.
But anyway, if you type a message, you'll get a little red marker, I believe, down in that Q&A. And if you bring it up, it'll show the questions in the open. And then it'll show, you can, once we've answered them, it'll give you the option to either answer live or there's another option.
Okay, got it.
Anyway, it will move, if you click on the options, it will move it into the answered or dismissed sections.
All right. So we have a number of attendees, and I'm looking to see if anybody has anything is not on the agenda for this evening. And I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'm going to move on to Chief Hanley with local emergency management update.
Good evening. Hopefully everybody's healthy. You probably get the bulletins 2 or 3 times a week when I send them out, giving you the basic updates, but I'll go a little beyond that. We're seeing mask compliance overall up, especially in the convenience stores and some of the other stores. Since we had that little kind of roundup there a couple of weeks ago, and the governor kind of was a little more stringent with that. I think people are serious that you do not want this thing to get out of control like we've seen in Mass and Connecticut, Rhode Island, and places around us, even eastern New Hampshire. We did have an incident in one of the stores where a guy refused to wear a mask when he came in. He actually took his mask out and started eating it. Then he refused a mask that was offered by the store. So we can't do anything about that kind of behavior. It's kind of odd, and we'll deal with that as it comes up. We're looking at store provisions are in pretty good shape. Paper goods, hand sanitizer, there's plenty of it out there. Masks, you can get them anywhere now. So we're in good shape with that. As far as the hand sanitizer, we put out a warning that there's a lot of stuff out there that's no good for you and it's harmful and dangerous. It's the stuff that's made out of methanol. It may come under some different names, but it's mostly made in Mexico. And a lot of that has been refused import into the country now. But some of it is still out there on store shelves. They're supposed to recall it. So if you're going to pick up hand sanitizer, just look at the container and the ingredients. It should be isopropyl alcohol, ethanol, or ethyl alcohol. That's the good stuff. And there's another one, benzyl conium or something. I've never heard of it. I don't even know what it is, but that's been approved by the CDC. All right. As the EMD, I put in a request to the State Emergency Operations Center for masks to be delivered to us on behalf of the town. My plan was to distribute those to local businesses so they have a stock on hand in case they got customers coming in without a mask. Now, we're supposed to get a little over 2,000 masks. These aren't surgical masks or N95s. They're basically cloth masks that have been donated. When I checked the other day, I saw that we were not on the schedule to get any, and 2,200 masks were going to the Middlebury Ski Patrol. I don't know how busy they are at this time of year, but I've got to call Eric up at the Emergency Operations Center and figure out what that's about. Anyway, that's hopefully we'll get those next week and get them to the businesses so you'll have a stockpile there. We've got no new governor's order violation reports either online or by phone or email. It's been a couple of weeks now. So that's an indicator that things are settling in and people are being healthy. At the PD, we finally got a supply after a 5-month request of N95 masks here. There's only 30 of them, but that should do for us for a couple of months. We were starting to burn through the ones we had, and we were getting a little antsy here without that kind of protection. So we're in good shape now for the next, probably the rest of the year. Budget-wise, we've been tracking our extraordinary expenses right since March on extraordinary costs for COVID. That's either if it's an overtime thing where we have to do one of these enforcement things or unusual expenses regards that. So we're keeping a track on that. When we come up to the point where the state may reimburse us some of that money, at least we'll have the documentation. When it comes to the students that are coming in and they're showing up this week, my daughter is actually one of the ones at the college that is testing them. We're reminding people of the need to protect themselves. The students are not a threat unless you let them be a threat. So we want everybody to know that just keep your social distance, keep your mask on, do good mask hygiene, wash it often, hang it up to dry outside if you can, and wash your hands often. And you know, the roots for this disease are the eyes, nose, and mouth. And if you can protect them, you're going to be in good shape. So we want to get that out to everybody as often as we can. Sound like a broken record sometimes on these memos that I put out. Right now, the COVID growth in our area is slow. We had another case in Addison County reported late today after I put out the bulletin. So we're up to a total of 74. Now that's since March, so we don't have a lot of active cases here. But they're still growing. So again, it hasn't gone away, so we need to be prepared for that. The good thing about the schools opening is that we're in a low COVID area. If we look at Georgia, where 260 kids in one school were quarantined because they had it. They walked into school with this disease, is what's happening. We're probably not going to see that here. So I think we're off to a strong start when kids start going to school, that we're not bringing a lot of people in that probably have this disease. So I think confidence is high, both from the health department and from the Emergency Operations Center, that at least in Addison County, or at least the Addison Central District, we're in good shape. By the way, all the 7 towns are rated in the 0 to 5 category for total cases since this began in March. And we haven't had an increase in any of those towns in several months. So, you know, confidence is high. We just don't want it to get out of hand. And lastly, we don't have any tests scheduled in Middlebury yet, the pop-up tests. They're slowly getting away from that because they want to keep their resources doing contact tracing in the event things happen at the schools. So I don't know if we're going to see any more at the health department here. I'll keep checking, and if we get any more announcements, I'll let everybody know. And that about wraps it up.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Do there any questions for Chief? Okay,
Yeah, one, Brian.
okay, go ahead.
Chief, how are the officers doing health-wise and through this? We keeping them all healthy?
We're in good shape. We put those engineering controls here and policy controls in place right away. And I think it's paid off for us with the protective equipment, the way we protect the building. Nobody's been sick.
And the shift in the shift schedule is working well for you?
Yeah, it is. They've settled into it. They actually like it.
Good. Good. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So next we'll go to Fred Kenny, the Executive Director of the Addison County Economic Development Corporation, with an update on pandemic recovery efforts. Fred?
Okay, my screen just went blank, so I assume you can see me.
We can.
All right, I guess you are activating me.
We see your,
All right, great. Good to see you all again. So a quick update on state and federal programs, and then I think I'm on the agenda to talk about the memo I sent you on a revolving loan fund. Asking me to start a video. I don't have a video.
Oh, okay.
So on the federal level, oh, do you need me to turn my video on? Is that what
Yes,
that
please.
means? Okay. There we go. Okay. On the federal level, there's the new bill of COVID relief has stalled in Congress, unfortunately. It's got some good provisions in it. So hopefully they'll get back together and get that passed by the end of this week or next week. On the state level, most of the programs that the legislature allocated CARES funds for are activated. They're up and running. There's only a couple of the ag programs that are still waiting to come online. So there is assistance for small businesses, for sole proprietorships, for women and minority-owned businesses, for outdoor recreation businesses, arts and culture organizations, farm, ag, and forestry businesses. There's help for folks to pay their rent, get caught up on rent, and also or mortgages. There's assistance for childcare providers, and the hazard pay program has started up as well. The $600 federal unemployment kicker has ended as of unemployment checks that'll come out for covering last week that's the last week would be the last week that they would get that. And also the payroll protection program application has closed down again, not because of a lack of funds, just because it was open for a certain period and that period has ended. So hopefully that bill that the Congress is working on has provisions in it to restart the unemployment dollars, extra federal dollars, and also reopen the PPP program. Another program that the legislature appropriated allocated funds for, was for technical assistance for small businesses. And the regional development corporations of Vermont, including ACEDC, responded to that notice of funding on Monday. So we filed a response to that to be the provider of the technical assistance, or to administer the technical assistance. We would contract with certain technical assistance providers like CPAs and e-commerce businesses, website developers, things like that, to help businesses that need it to recover. So if we get that, ACDC would hopefully hire what's called a navigator, a business navigator, to work with businesses, figure out what they need for technical assistance, and then contract to get them that technical assistance, which would be free to the business. So somebody's going to get that contract. Hopefully it'll be the regional development corporations, but if not, somebody will be providing that in Addison County between now and the end of the year. So on the revolving loan fund, I sent you a memo with some things to consider. Just to be clear, establishing a revolving loan fund is one option that's available to the town. Eligible uses of revolved CDBG funds are pretty broad. You can use it for a lot of different things. It has to have somehow benefit low and moderate income residents, but it can be used for economic development, housing, public services, and certain public facilities. And I talked to the Commissioner of Housing and Community Affairs, and their position is that they would like to see towns and other entities that have revolved CDBG funds to get them spent, to utilize them. And they'll find a way. If you come up with an idea on how to use that money, as long as it meets those broad criteria, they'll find a way to say yes. Excuse me, to the idea. When you closed out the CDBG grant that these funds, where the funds came from, there was an agreement with the state to do a certain thing with the fund, and I think it was to create an RLF, but they'll allow you to change that use as long as it fits the criteria. You just need to make the request, and they're actually encouraging towns to use this money, and they'd be willing to work with you to find a use for it, an appropriate use for it. And another reason they're encouraging towns to use these CDBG funds is they expect that over in the next few years, hopefully when we come out of this pandemic, that HUD is going to be pushing them harder to recapture old unused CDBG revolve funds. So they're willing to work with you. Lots of different things you could do with it. I think at the 2 meetings ago, you asked the town staff to give you ideas. So this memo is just about one idea. It's just one potential use of the funds. And ACEDC is not making a recommendation that this is the thing you should use the funds for. It's just wanted to give you details of what you'd have to look at and consider if we're creating a revolving loan fund is what you decide to do. It's often what happens with these funds, because when the funds first revolve around, when they're first coming in from the entity that you gave the funds to, that's the only thing you can do with the funds, is create a revolving loan fund. But once they're fully revolved and they become the property of the town, you can do pretty much whatever you want with them, as long as they as the use meets the criteria for the CDBG program. So if we're creating a revolving loan fund is what you choose to do, I tried to give you and point out the options on how to structure control of the fund. Gave you 3 different options and told you which one we recommend. And then I gave you the details on all the different considerations that you would have to look at, regardless of how you structure the control of it. All of those issues kind of have to be resolved or stated in a policy before you create the funds, so that whoever's going to, whether it's town staff or us that are going to run it for you, your philosophy and how you want the funds used and the goals and objectives of the fund are clearly stated, and all the other things I put in there kind of fall from that. They fall into place from that outlook that you have for the fund. So whatever structure you choose, ACEDC is willing to assist with the process and getting it set up, whether you're going to do it or you give it to us to do. We're willing to help you go through that process and set it up if the RLF is what you choose to do with the funds. So I'm not going to walk through the whole memo. I figure you guys can look at that on your own time, and it's all stuff that would have to happen once you make the decision anyway. So, but happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Fred. We've actually all had the memo. So has anybody got any questions on the memo or anything else that Fred covered?
I just have a quick question, Fred, about the PPP you mentioned. I know they're not accepting any more applications, but when does the loan forgiveness portion of that portal opens up? I don't see anything clear on their website.
Yeah, that's because there is no clear guidance yet. I was just talking to a couple bankers today, and they said that they got Treasury did send out some guidance to them, but it's still very vague, and they expect to get clear guidance over the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
You can go on the Treasury's website and get the forgiveness application and
Yeah.
file it with your banker, with your lender. But the lenders right now are not in a huge hurry to go through that process with you, because they want to wait till, clear guidance is given. And there's the expectation that the program will be extended and changed with this new bill that Congress is working on. So they want to see what happens with that.
It's just that I'm afraid that some people who are not aware of this might miss the deadline, if there is any, whenever it comes.
I'll check, but I believe the deadline to file for forgiveness isn't until the end of the year. And
Okay.
again, that'll probably change when this bill passes.
All right.
Dan?
Yeah, the National Bank of Middlebury opened their portal to accepting applications for forgiveness on yesterday. They actually sent me an email, suggested I be the first to go through it. I said I hadn't spent it all yet, so I'm not in a position. We've been really slow rolling it. I mean, we've been milking that thing since we got it.
Yeah, and a lot of people are still using the funds or waiting to see, the new rules, so they, make sure they do it right. But yeah, some banks are taking applications, but the deadline is not imminent yet.
Right.
I mean,
No.
Yeah, I think it's just interim guidance at this point, right?
yes.
Without final guidance, I'm not sure that any of the banks will actually make the final plunge to qualify as a forgivable loan until they've got the final rules.
Yeah, I think everything they sent out on this said interim,
That's everything I've read so far.
even interim final rules. How can it be interim and
Yeah.
final?
Okay, thoughts on, oh, yes, Heather.
So just a couple of comments. The note in the meeting agenda or the meeting notes about possibly using it for the downtown improvement district, or not, excuse me, not the downtown improvement district, the downtown master plan. I just want to make a comment that I would like to see us try to help businesses come out of the pandemic and recover. I think before I would choose to put it towards the downtown master plan. So that's just a comment from my perspective if we're going to ask staff to spend some more time on that. So I would rate ideas that help the businesses locally first above maybe that planning process. And then second, I attended a week or so ago one of the SBA's webinars on the PPP loan forgiveness, and it was very good. And I think the takeaway for me on that was at the time I did the webinar, there was still no way for the banks to send the forgiveness applications to the Treasury. So banks, my understanding were banks were asking people to wait to apply for forgiveness until there was a clear way, because there's a time limit there, I think of 60 days. Once the bank receives the application, then they have to get it to wherever it needs to go from there. Anyway, they don't have a clear path for how to transmit that information. So they're afraid if they get it and they hit the 60-day mark, they may not have a way. So I think they're kind of, my understanding is they're asking people to just wait until there's more information. So, but if the SBA is, the Small Business Administration is still running those webinars, I would highly recommend it for anyone that's watching or interested. It was really very informative.
Yeah, they're very good. There's one a week on applying to EIDL and PPP, or EIDL and PPP. And then there's another one every week for PPP, just on PPP forgiveness. I think they're Tuesdays and Thursdays or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also obviously the forgiveness application is available, but there's a 7-page document that explains it step by step. It's pretty thorough. It's not necessarily easily understandable, but it's there. And again, National Bank of Middlebury's asking me to submit it. They're moving forward. Maybe.
Okay, is everyone prepared to discuss whether we want to move all or some of these funds into a Middlebury revolving loan fund? Or what is the pleasure of the board? Nick?
Brian, I still stand by what we have discussed previously. I don't want to make that move yet. I'm not compelled to do that. I think the idea of letting our department heads, especially thinking with regard to planning and whatever we may need to do to help economic development, I'd rather hear from the department heads on what their thoughts are. I'm going to be looking for things, ideas that are just better thoughts. You know, they want to think better, think innovative, because every community is trying to figure out how to come out of this. And so I'm going to trust, we have a really good staff, and I want to trust their innovation and see what they come up with. So I really don't want to move any of this money out just yet. I want to hold on to it a little longer.
Just to note that I have worked with Jen to brainstorm a potential list of things that we could use this funding for. And I think, Heather, there may be an intersection between the downtown master plan and some business recovery efforts. And I've also talked to Fred about how we might leverage other programs with that funding. So those are all things that we'll be looking at over the next month or so to report back on.
Well, Jen certainly is good at thinking big. And so I think I'm going to be really intrigued by what she, as a planning professional, comes up with, because to me, it's not just the downtown master plan, but it's the idea of, well, what other aspects do we need in the community? If you recall, one of the things that was compelling toward the downtown master plan was setting up a model to look also at the south end of town, look at the Exchange Street. We know that we hear from employers constantly that there's housing shortages in different segments. So, you know, the idea of a housing analysis that could be done to determine where housing could go, what type of housing, something that would help to possibly entice housing developers to come and be here. So I'm going to really, Jen is the one I personally, I'm going to be most intrigued by what she comes up with, but I know there's a lot of other good ideas, I'm sure, coming out of the rest of the staff. So I look forward to that. So that's why I would just assume, say at this point, let's hold off on a discussion until we hear that.
Then why don't we take this under advisement and continue the discussion and see what Kathleen brings us back from the staff in their thoughts. And maybe put it out a couple meetings, Kathleen?
We're targeting September 22nd for our report.
All right. Okay, so thank you very much, Fred. You did what we asked of you to lay it out, what it would look like. And so I think that's good information for everybody on the board, and appreciate your efforts in doing that for us.
Always a pleasure.
Are there any other questions of Fred before we move on? Okay, then I'm going to move to Howard Weidlitz, the chair of the Energy Committee. Howard is, excuse me, Howard is with us to discuss the committee's recommendation on solar net metering. And Howard, are you in?
Yes. Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay.
You can.
Okay. Yeah. Let me know if you have any trouble hearing me, because our Wi-Fi is sketchy at times. So first, on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to come up with a recommendation to the select board. My understanding is, I think the select board was approached with a proposal for a net metering project. And, you know, we suggested looking at the bigger picture and considering other options. And that's when we were tasked to go off and come up with a recommendation. And we also have Van Barth is on the line. He's a Middlebury College student and a committee member who, very active member who did a lot of the work. He captured a lot of the criteria from the discussions we had and put together a lot of these slides. So he's also available to answer questions. I think Steve Meyer might also be on. So if we go to the next slide. So the approach we took was first come up with the criteria. So we had some discussions, came up with a set of criteria, which you will see on the following slides, and then identify what options exist. And from that, look at the data and come forward with a recommendation. So we have a recommendation for you today, and we will get to that at the end. So next slide, please. So I'll go through these quickly, make sure we allow some time for you to be able to ask questions at the end here. But obviously cost is a big factor. So one is, what are the upfront costs? Not all these options actually have upfront costs. So that's certainly a strong consideration. Lifetime costs. So there are O&M costs, other things that factor in throughout the life of the project. So if you want to go to the next slide. And then location, as we saw with the South Street project, there's some sensitivity to that. So we want to make sure that that's also considered. One, there is a potential benefit that if we have an array that's in town, there could be some additional revenue that we'd realize from that. But we also need to consider what kind of pushback there might be depending on the location. There are some ideas we have there that we discussed, and we can get into that if you have any questions about that. And then the next one is time until implementation. Really what we're saying here is if you have one of the projects, one of the options is going to be 4 years later than another, that's a potential for lost credits that you're going to get from that particular option. So that's certainly a consideration. We didn't see that really factoring in, and you'll see when we get to the data later, we didn't think that would be of issue. All right, so the next one would be the ownership structure. And it's really who owns it, lots of considerations are we keeping it within the state in terms of the state economy, or even better yet, the local economy. Those are things that we factored into this decision. And then, what is the town's role in this? Are the owners, and then also things like the renewable energy credits, and obviously that's factors in as far as GMP is concerned and who gets the benefit of that. So if you go to the next slide. So efficiency of the investment. So there are several things here. One is what's the benefit from a carbon reduction point of view, financial benefits. When looking at this, we believe that solar net metering is really more of a financial benefit than carbon, only because GMP is planning on going carbon free. They're saying by 2025, it might be more like 2028, but that's happening in the not so distant future. So then you're not getting the same benefit. If all electricity is carbon free, then this only provides so much. Okay, so if you go to the next one. And then the last criterion that we considered was, things, the companies that we were looking at, integrity of the companies, didn't see anything there. What impact it might have on the town, for the staff is one option going to be more of a burden on the town staff than another. Although we didn't really see that being as much of a factor. So let's get to the options that we were looking at. As I mentioned, SolarSense, I believe, is the company that approached the select board with a proposal. So there are really two main models that we have here. One is it's a net metering project where someone builds an array and then give you the option to buy credits from that at a discounted rate. And the two that fell into that category was SolarSense and Green Lantern. And we've had discussions with Green Lantern in the past, but nothing came of that to date. Then the second model is the Acorn Energy Co-op, and that's where they work as the middle team, people in an array that gets built, and then having people buy into that. And we'll have more on that when we get into some more detail, I guess, that's coming up. And then one thing to note is that by law, we have a limit of 500 kilowatts that we can purchase. And right now the town is at 153 kilowatts, with 150 of that coming from the police station, the array behind the station. So that leaves us with 347 to play around with. All right. So for the net metering credits, as I mentioned, this is such that we would buy potentially 347 kilowatts of net metering from them, of credits from them, and then they would give us a discount. So if we get $1 of credit from the array, we pay 88 cents for the SolarSense proposal and 87.5 cents for the Green Lantern. So it's really just getting electricity at a discounted rate. No upfront costs are necessary for this. You just sign the contract and away you go with that once they're ready to include you in the array. Some of them, they're still building the array, so we might, there's some delay as far as when that contract would be able to start. Okay, and then the next one is the Acorn CoOp. And I don't know if I imagine most people are aware of the fact that they're right now working on a project in Bristol. And the way this works, we met with Rich Carpenter, who's part of Acorn, to explain how this works. And what they have is they have a set of Series A investors who provide investment up front. In return, they get the federal tax credits. And they own that array for the first 6 years. I guess, as Steve Meyer was pointing out, they would also get the benefit of depreciation of that array. And then there are Series B investors, of which the town would be one. And basically what you're doing there, we would be just buying a number of panels from the array and getting the benefit of whatever production comes from those panels. And there are estimates that you'll see on the next couple of slides. And go ahead. So in terms of costs, as I mentioned, the SolarSense and Green Lantern, there's no upfront cost, no lifetime costs. It's basically you sign a contract and get the benefit. With the Acorn project, there is a large upfront cost, and the lifetime costs are also fairly high. And obviously, if we went this route, we'd have to get, we'd want to make sure that we have all the numbers right. This was a result of our discussions with Rich Carpenter, and we feel that this is a pretty good estimate of where we would be. So if you go to the next slide. Location, you can see the various locations. Bull Rock is the company that would be constructing the array. They do a lot of solar arrays. They built the building over on Exchange Street for BSRAP. And then you have Green Lantern based over in Waterbury, and then Acorn, which is very local. And these are the estimates as far as when we think we'd be able to receive the benefit of the net metering project. So here's where we get to what is the benefit to the town. So our calculations show that we have monthly, annual, and over 25 years, which is generally the life that you get with an array. The arrays can go longer, but it degrades over time, the efficiency of the panels. So we have, as you can see, Acorn provides the greatest net savings. Now, keep in mind, this is factoring in the initial costs, the O&M costs, the bond plus interest. So this is after you take all that into account. This is what we think we would see from the Acorn project. It's a little bit more than twice as much as the others. Okay, next slide, please. So given that, our recommendation is to go with the Acorn model for several reasons. One is financially, we get the greatest benefit. It also, whereas the others are tapping into arrays that they're building that already exist, the Acorn project would actually build a new array for the purpose of Middlebury receiving credits from that. So we're adding to the renewable energy pool in the state. We also, there's also the possibility that, let's say if we were to go with a 500 kilowatt array, that let's say if Middlebury took the 347 from that, then there's an opportunity for other businesses, residents to buy in by purchasing, a number of panels. I believe it was $567 is what they were charging per panel. So if a resident wanted to buy 10 panels, they could add renewable energy to their household, and it's a nice way to do it. So the benefit could be potentially extended beyond just the town. Okay, and then just a little bit more in the next slide. And obviously, once you went with the Acorn, we would own the array after 6 years, in which case we have full control over that. And then in terms of what it's going to take from the town, we believe because Acorn really does a lot of the legwork to get this going, we didn't see there being a huge need for town resources. We probably want to look into that more in terms of actually getting a very good estimate as far as what it takes if we were to go this route. But we didn't see that in our discussions because Acorn is really they're the ones who provide the resources to get it up and going and handle the O&M and all the once it's time to dismantle, it's all handled through them. Okay, and then the next slide. So just to point out the fact that there are other options, and that would be a mix of the projects. Things we could buy into the Bristol and have a smaller array to get the rest of the 347 from Middlebury. We could buy a certain proportion we could sign a contract for a certain portion from Solar Sense or Green Lantern, with the rest being an array that we do through Acorn. And looking at it, we did actually look to see right now, we talked in the past, I believe there's been discussion about putting an array at the wastewater treatment plant. Would not be able to handle the full 347, but one possibility is you build an array. I don't remember exactly, it was maybe in the 200K range, KW range. But there are lots of options, and obviously the wastewater treatment plant would be certainly less controversial, but there would be a lot of work to determine whether or not that's feasible. So that's where we stand with the recommendation. And so I want to make sure we left enough time for questions. I don't know if Van, if you had anything you wanted to add. Please,
I'll see where we're at with questions and see if there's anything I need to add.
Okay, yep, great, thanks.
Thank you, Howard. Nice presentation. So questions from the board? Heather.
So what happened with the big project kind of behind Holiday Road in Middlebury? We were supposed to get some credits from that project also, but I don't see anything happening there. Do you have an update on that and whether how that factors into this recommendation?
We don't. I don't know. Steve, I don't know if you're still on. If you wanted to jump in with that, you might have more. But we didn't. I know at one point there was consideration. I'm not really sure exactly where that array stands at this point. So we can certainly look into that to see, because that would also obviously provide some benefit. I wasn't sure exactly how that model was working with the town.
Can you hear me? This is Steve.
Yep, there you go. Thanks.
And Kathleen, I think, might also have some history on this, but my memory, they haven't been an active project, I don't think, for a year or two now. And I think they had problems in getting a partner to buy the electricity. So Green Mountain Power was not interested at the time in making a commitment to buy that power. That was 10 times bigger than the Bristol project at Acorn. So it was a big project, and I think if I'm remembering correctly, Green Mountain Power was already at the limit of what they were looking to buy in that time frame, and so I think the company has gone on to other ventures. But does that sound right to you, Kathleen? Or am I
Yes,
remembering that wrong?
that does sound right to me, Steve.
Okay. Nick?
Thanks, Howard, for the input. I'm thinking, I keep seeing the thing of other options. And so with this 500 kW limit, we have 153 we've already used, and we have 347. Is this exclusively for solar or any renewable?
Well,
And the reason I asked it is I
yeah.
feel sometimes, I mean, the solar has its place, but I feel like that often becomes the renewable that gets the most emphasis, and I'm still not convinced it's the most reliable for our area. I think, having a diversified renewable portfolio is, in my mind, much better. Some of the other options that have kind of floated around a little bit was, maybe a methane capture at the wastewater treatment plant when that's eventually opened. Or I've heard that there have been some plans to upgrade some of the hydro facilities, along the Otter Creek, but it hasn't occurred because of the fact that they have to keep line space open for solar, even though solar is not a 24/7. So I keep coming back to, in our options in our portfolio, is it only solar? Is that the only thing we really want to put our emphasis on? And that leaves me a little uncertain as to how much I want to support more solar at this time, until I see some numbers on that for other alternatives. So that's where my question comes, is if we use 347 and we put most of that into solar, are we really potentially hurting ourselves for other, again, more reliable 24/7 type of renewable options? So that's my big question there. And certainly from what I've seen in the presentation, you did a good job of sort of starting to outline things, but there's still obviously a lot of questions. And one that jumps at me real big is, if we enter into these contracts, what if a better technology comes along in 10 years? Are we still committed to what is at that point could be an inferior technology, as opposed to being able to jump into something that is better and has emerged?
All good points with good questions. And as we experience with the solar, the panels that Acorn uses are bifacial, meaning that you get a lot more output than you did just a few years ago. So yeah, the technology is definitely a factor. In terms of whether or not it's limited to solar, that's a really good question. It's something that it has not come up. Yeah.
Howard, for the benefit of the board who may not have seen it, Ross Conrad responded in the Q&A box saying, I believe it is for all and any renewable energy.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So then I go back to, it's been kind of a long-term elusive project to us, but I have faith one day it will occur, is the hydro facility by the falls in town. Would that be part of this 500 limit? And it sounds like Ross has answered the question as it would be.
And we
I
have,
would hate to have a situation where we're so overloaded with solar that suddenly we can't take that.
Yeah,
now, yeah, go ahead.
I would suggest that we'll dig into that and get back to you for sure. I was going to give a different answer than Ross, so obviously we don't know is the real answer. So we should commit to doing the research and getting back to you.
I mean, if we're all committed to renewables. There's no doubt about that. It's just a matter of making sure that we have the best renewables for our geographic part of the country.
Kathleen, do we have any different legal entity within the town that would qualify to as a carve out to, like, is the waste treatment facility something that could be carved out and qualify separately, or is that all bundled underneath the town?
I will look into that further, but I believe it's all bundled underneath the town.
Okay.
There's another, this is Steve again. There is a restriction about how many net metering projects any single meter, you could think of it as a meter, can be a part of. So in that sense, there is a part of it where you can, I think there's a separate meter at the sewage treatment plant, and that could be handled, that could be assigned to one project, and then other electric meters within the town can be assigned to other community projects. But this 500 kW limit is, we understand it to be a town-wide, that the town gets basically lumped all together as far as that 500 limit is concerned.
Okay.
And I do know, Ross, in some of our discussions, there is a push to try and certainly we would advocate for that to increase the 500 kW limit. I mean, so the question is, will that change over time?
Yeah, there have been some advocacy in Montpelier around that question, but it's still, it hasn't moved forward this year, certainly. So
I guess one other thing to consider to address your question, Nick, is a lot of these things could potentially take a long time. So we did spend a lot of time trying to see what we could do as a committee to move the hydro along, in Middlebury, and that just, for a number of reasons, that didn't go anywhere. So it's one thing to consider is how realistic is it that these things are going to happen, and then what's the time frame for that? Because as we mentioned before, if it's 5 or 10 years, that's a lot of lost revenue potentially. So that's, all these things need to be factored in together.
No, and I appreciate that, Howard. So thank you for that.
Brian, Ross made another comment. Can everyone see it if you open the Q&A box? Do you want me to read it out loud, or
Do you want me to unmute Ross, Heather? Just allow him to speak.
That's up to Brian.
Okay.
You can unmute Ross. Yeah.
Let me do that.
Okay,
go ahead, Ross.
He's muted still. He's into the.
Ross, you should be able to unmute your microphone at this point.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just pointing out what the guys said there about the fact that the law could change in the future if the legislature decides to expand the 500 kilowatt limit, but also pointing out that right now the town is spending more money for electricity than necessary. All of these options deliver savings, like some of them within a month or two, some of them within a couple of years, and the savings are significant. And so I'm just wondering why we would want to keep paying for expensive electricity when we can getting it at a significant discounted rate.
Well, I'm not disputing that point, Ross, but on the other hand is, will we still have that same level of savings if, and when, well, if, when better technologies come along in 5 years? Are we putting ourselves in a position where we may in fact be paying more for this at a later point when something less expensive emerges and just generating capability is costs may be reduced? That's my warning, and I don't have the answer to that. That's why this will obviously need some more exploring, and these are all the questions that need to be answered, and some of the questions need to be answered in my mind. So it's not a matter of just immediate, we're looking at 25-year contract periods. I want to sort of get a better forecast of what it looks like down the tracks.
I had a question, and it's
Go ahead,
something
Linda.
I should know, so I'm sorry. The 500 kilowatt, is that for the town in terms of the municipal town versus everyone in the town?
Yes, that's correct.
It's just the municipality.
Right.
Because were we to move forward with building, with working with Acorn, would there be an opportunity if Nick's scenario played out where we could then sell, find buyers potentially? I'm just troubleshooting here. We would then have an asset that we could potentially sell, is what I'm saying. And, we would have something to work with. So, but I mean, my general thought too is I don't want to bypass something very good for the possibility that something perfect will come down the line, because we just don't know. And as Ross said, the savings are there immediately, and I'd like to put that to good use. So those are my only thoughts.
I had actually kind of started this quite a while back, and I appreciate the Energy Committee's work on this. I'm of similar mind to Lindsay and what Ross commented, that if there are renewable options, I think we should explore what those are, that we can, especially if it brings significant savings to the town. Kathleen has made a suggestion that maybe if people are interested, if the board is interested, that the staff would look at what that path might look like for us, and especially if the recommendation is to at least make an effort to pursue ownership through Acorn projects, and then how much time that would take, and then we can run that through our prioritization process and see if it meets our standards. So is that acceptable path to move forward on?
There's a logic to that, Brian, so I would agree with that.
So I'm seeing a bunch of head nodding. So Kathleen, we're taking your advice here, as always, and we'll ask you to look at this recommendation that the Energy Committee has provided and see how that might overlay in your duties and how that would look for the town, including the funding of it and everything. That's kind of those unspoken requirements to get it done. So,
And it would be great, as the Energy Committee indicated, if they would respond to some of those questions about the limits and what our other options might be.
yeah. So Howard, we thanks a lot for everybody's work on this. Appreciate the presentation. I think it was very informative for everybody. We have some questions that if you didn't capture them, get them out to you.
Brian, Ross has his hand up. I wasn't sure if he had another comment or if that was an old hand raise. And Steve also made a quick comment in the Q&A if the board would like to take a look at that.
So Steve says, thank you for your interest and attention. Let us know how we can help from the Energy Committee, and appreciate that, Steve. And Ross, did you have something, Ross?
No, old comment. It was answered. Lindsay basically said what I was going to say. So.
Okay. All right. So, so if the Energy Committee could get back to Kathleen when you have an opportunity to look into those questions that came up, and we'll continue to hopefully move this forward in some manner. And at this point, we're not looking for a decision from the board. I think the board can take this under advisement, and we'll see what Kathleen brings back to us. Okay.
Thank you for your attention to this. We appreciate it.
Okay. I'm going to move on then. The next is Nancy Malcolm, and she was here. Oh, she's there. Okay. Nancy's with us. Neighbors Together regarding updated budget for the V-Trans grant. So Nancy, welcome. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you. We had some meetings back in May with John Griffin, looking at our budget, because obviously things got a little bit changed on us, and we were able to regroup pretty fast, actually, and put together some more programming. One of the suggestions that John made at that late May meeting was to actually buy some, he suggested tents as a possibility that could help us do some of our programming, especially with Bundle. And as you are probably aware, Bundle is no longer in a physical space, and we will not be in a physical space. It has been continuing actually on a Thursday morning basis at the park. We have some opportunities to have some programming within tents. And we know going forward, we could be using tents, and not only just ours for us, but the town would own them. We've reached out to the recreation department and the school district and town hall theater and various and sundry things that there would be a definite use for them, and the town would own them. We have to get these tents here, and we have to use them before the project is, or the construction piece is up. And that's one of the stipulations that we have to have. And then we can use them going forward in whatever ways that we see fit. So we have three. I know one has come already that we ordered that was within the guidelines of $3,000 that could be approved without approval from the select board. And we would like to order 3 more. And I think you have all that information in your packet. We did some research on it. And we're sort of under the gun because all of a sudden, because of all the COVID things out there, and just to remind people, we have to do things with the economic piece, with the project in mind. And we're not supposed to consider COVID, although, as we all know, it's a gray area that we can't completely separate because one has exacerbated the other. But it's important that we get these tents here so we can get them up and actually use them. And we do have some uses in mind going forward, some things that are coming up, and some with Bundle in particular. So we are asking if you would approve the $3,356.45 for the additional 3 tents that we would like to purchase. This too would give us different sizes that we could cobble together, make use for larger spaces, especially when we're still dealing with the social distancing. We also know that we want to be able to have tents used in Triangle Park is another space that when we originally or had that planned. There was discussion about how it could be used. And so we're just trying to be as flexible as possible and thinking in the future.
Okay, thanks, Nance. Any questions of the board? Speak up if, okay, now I can see you, Nick.
Nancy, I mean, it sounds great, but who would have long-term responsibility for the care and storage and maintenance of these things?
Well, we've talked with the town. The town would own them. We would not own them. And Bill Kernan is, he's actually enthusiastically embraced this. So, and I think he's looking into ways of storing them.
Perfect, thanks.
It may also be an opportunity down the road, besides working with stakeholders and different entities, it may be an opportunity to even rent them out as from the town's point of view. I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing that out as a possibility.
I knew you thought about that. I was just curious myself.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Lindsay?
Yeah, do we know sort of the lifetime of these tents? How long can we expect to use them if we take care of them?
I honestly don't know that. I would expect a while if they're taken care of, but I do not know that. We're also we're looking into buying some heating systems so that we could continue into the fall with some of these activities. So,
okay, yeah. I also feel enthusiastic about the tents, so you can let Bill know.
Okay.
So these can be used for any other users for the town, right? For the Parks and Rec, or anybody wants to use them?
Absolutely. We've talked with Dustin and he's on board.
I think it's a great idea to have them.
And once again, the original idea was put in our heads by John Griffin. So that was like, aha.
What color are you getting, Nancy?
They're white.
Yep.
I think they're all white. We looked at, there was somewhere striped.
Pretty much all of them are white, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And they do have sides.
Any other questions? Pleasure of the board.
So I move to approve Neighbors Together's request to use VTrans grant funds for the purchase of 5 canopy tents for a total cost of $3,356.45.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, signal with a thumbs up. Unanimous. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And can I just throw it out that this is Fair Food Week. So we're all missing field days. So you can get your fried dough. I know you can get it different places, and it's not only in Middlebury, but we spoke with Virgins in Bristol to see if they would be on board with that. So it's starting tonight through Saturday, and then we're going to be doing, and stay tuned for the big giveaway, and we have 5 really nice prizes that if people send in their receipts, pictures of their receipts, and it'll be on the Experience Middlebury website, and you have a chance to win either let's see, the 5, one is a 3 burner gas grill with a cover, and one is a staycation at the Swift House. One is a pamper yourself, which is lovely for certain people. One is family friendly, and shoot, why did I even did it. Oh, one is a really fun Middlebury, well, it's an outdoor adventure thing with a lot of like a Yeti big container and all kinds of things like that. So all the prizes are worth about $500. So
Wow.
Well worth going out and purchase. And so far we can say we've gotten about $44,000 worth of purchases from our other initiatives. So I think, that's a good for going on the fly and trying to make up for different things that we had no control over. So
Nancy,
anyway,
where
that's
can we
all.
get the fried bread dough here in Middlebury?
Well, I think Dan Brown is one of them, and and you can also go on the Experience Middlebury website, and it has all the list of all the different places. In fact, there's quite a variety of fried dough, so you could just eat your way all around and compare.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of restaurants going to do their own take on fried dough.
There you go.
I haven't actually talked to our chef, but I know if he does anything, it won't be like your typical, but it'll be pretty amazing. So I just put the pressure on him. He's going to really have to step up.
There you go.
Okay, thanks, Nancy.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Next, we're going to move on to discussion of interest in joining the Addison County Communications Union District, which was formed to expand communication infrastructure, including broadband. And this is an effort by the Addison County Regional Planning Commission Executive Director Adam Luigi. And he's seeking our board's support for the formation of the Addison County Communications Union District. Adam describes the effort as I'm working with several towns in the region to create a communications union district for the Addison region. Called a CUD is one type of entity that can operate a communications network. It works like a solid waste district or fire district to aggregate capital to build infrastructure for public good, in this case, broadband. It also serves to separate municipalities from any liability that might arise from the operation of that system. We're moving fast to try to take advantage of some changes to Vermont law and some funding opportunities created by the state and federal government to respond to the needs created by the COVID-19 epidemic. We hope our efforts will enable us to help build the broadband network that so many of you need. Thank you again for your help and support. And he's reported that to date, the towns of New Haven, Moncton, Ferrisburg, Leicester, Salisbury, and Ripton have agreed to support the formation of the district. And he's anticipating a positive response from Shoreham and Waltham as well. Questions or thoughts on this? Dan.
Yeah, is there is there any negative to this? I mean, reading it, it's all positive. It's like we should do this. Is there any negative to this? Does it take away anything from any of our efforts, or does it take anything away from any of our staff responsibilities of the town?
Kathleen, my take was this is something we've been kind of floundering with it actually supports our efforts that we don't have the time or resources to do. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and it looks like there's going to be more funding available, and this is one of the things we're kicking around for a possibility for some of those CDBG funds that we talked about early in the meeting, maybe to leverage something with broadband, because that could benefit, be a wide benefit for businesses and residents alike. Ross Conrad, who's on the Regional Planning Commission, I promoted him to panelist if you have any questions about that. He brought this to my attention, and in addition to the Addison County Regional Planning Commission newsletter.
Ross, do you have comments on this?
So, yeah, it does seem like it's a win-win kind of a thing. There's not a lot of downside to it. It's not, the town won't have any responsibilities. The union district, it's kind of like the educational union district. It's its own separate thing. It'll own the broadband system. It'll run it. There's no tax dollars that go into it. It'll fund itself. As I understand it, there is currently a grant that the Regional Planning Commission received recently that's going to fund for the first 3 months. It funds a feasibility study for broadband build out here in Addison County. If that feasibility study looks positive, then there's a second 3-month payment of the grant to cover a rather high level business plan. Which will get into, identifying vendors, costs, sequence of events, things like that. And so, it seems like, with the current pandemic and the need for good broadband, the difficulties that some areas in the county and even in Middlebury are having, this is a potential way for the town to kind of address this without a whole lot of effort on your part, except for a positive vote tonight to join the district.
Ross, second question, if we do, would you be interested and willing to support as our representative to the governing board?
Yes, because for at least the first 3 months, there's not going to be a whole lot for the governing board to do. And so that works for me because I'm real busy right now. But yeah, that would be fine. Kathleen was talking with Adam about this, and it makes sense to have someone, I guess, on the Regional Planning Commission to also be on the Communication Union District to help with, just communication and keeping the flow of information, facilitating that in a way that's works well, and then feedback to the board when necessary.
Okay. Other questions or thoughts from the board? Pleasure of the board.
I move to approve the select board resolution supporting the formation of the Addison County Communications District.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any last comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of supporting the motion, signify with thumbs up. It's unanimous. I'm recommending that we go with somebody who's already on the PC board as our representative. We need to appoint someone to that. Thoughts of the board?
I haven't, I did reach out to Ross and ask him if he was interested. Since he made the mistake of bringing this to our attention, I thought he might be. I have not had the opportunity to reach out to our other regional planning commission representatives to see if they would be willing to serve as well, but I could do that for a future meeting.
Should we just move to appoint Ross as a representative now?
I would support that, and then we could have others as alternates if they
Yes.
are willing to.
Certainly think we want to do that before Ross has a chance to say no, so let's go for it.
I'm kind of thinking the same.
We need to mute him.
Yeah.
Mute him.
So I'll move to appoint Ross Conrad as Middlebury's representative to the governing body of the Addison County Communication Union District.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify with a thumbs up. Ross, as always, thank you for your involvement and care for the community, and hopefully we can actually move something forward here.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to move on then to a follow-up on our Middlebury Regional Emergency Medical Services request for increased funding from the town. This goes back to just some discussions that we had on the board following the last town meeting, and then just very soon afterwards we went kind of into these dark holes, and in an attempt to get back to this in time so that we can have some discussion and action before we get into the serious budgeting. It's on this calendar. Nick is the one who's brought this up, and so I'm gonna give the mic to Nick here. And Nick, if you could just kind of share your thoughts.
Thanks, Brian. First of all, the way I'm looking at this is not, want to say, first of all, the professionalism of the EMS people is outstanding. And so this is not meant to play anything negative on them, but it is the fact that this board, as caretaker of the taxpayers' money, has to make sure the money is being well spent. And if you recall, this 63,000 plus budget request increase came rather late in the budget cycle, not long before town meeting. And I personally felt like it left a lot of questions for me. And I know speaking to others on the board felt the same way as to whether it was, what the money was going to be used for, how well it was going to be spent. And I was actually not a fan of this, but the voters approved it for a year. So it gave us the opportunity to be able to look into this in closer detail, which we had kind of tentatively planned to do, as I recall, in June, but the COVID thing threw that whole schedule out the door. But nonetheless, the issue is still there. Among the aspects of this is that this is the largest amount of money given to any organization that is not under control of our town manager. And so we need to make sure that it is, being well spent. So it is time to bring this up. I have a number of questions that I would like answered before I'm comfortable proceeding with this or deciding in my own mind whether we do continue or not. And I know many of you do too, including how is the money being spent? What's the fiscal stability of the organization? What's the hospital's role into this? And then among other things, is there anything specifically that as providers of this funding that the citizens of Middlebury would be expecting to receive, such as a reduced rate in transport? But anyway, I think I put together like 16 different questions. And so what I'd like to propose is that each of us come up with any questions that we've thought about since this issue first came up. We send it, maybe have those within 2 weeks, get them to Kathleen to compile the list, and then we could send it on to the EMS people, give them a 30-day or nominal 30-day to review them. And then we may then have a couple of us from the board plus the town manager go and meet with them to go through these and get the answers that I think we're all looking for, to make sure that if we do decide to continue this, we're doing it confidently. So that's, and as you mentioned, Brian, we're kind of getting, and Kathleen brought up too, is the budget the cycle is creeping up on us. And so we're going to need to move on this pretty soon. So I would certainly be willing to be one of those people if so chosen. And if you don't want me to do that, I'm perfectly fine with that as well. But at least to keep this discussion going, because I don't want it to come up as another, not just 11th hour, but 11:30th hour issue. And we aren't prepared for it. And this suddenly becomes something ongoing that we may not be fully comfortable with.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Thoughts from the board? Are there others that have thoughts on this, or is that an acceptable way to address it? Submit some all the questions, and let Kathleen congregate those questions, or
I just have,
Heather?
yeah, Kathleen, I know when we met with them prior to the town meeting discussion, we had asked to see like audit reports and, financials on a more regular basis. Have they supplied any of that information voluntarily as we've gone through this?
Did we lose Kathleen? Oh, there she is.
Y'all froze up there for a second. We haven't received anything, but I haven't requested it yet either. I don't know when the end of their fiscal year is. If it's June 30th, it would be a little bit early for any financial report. Kate Rothwell from Middlebury Regional EMS is attending the meeting tonight. If you have any questions for her, and I'm sure she's listening to that request.
Kathleen, when is the deadline for these organizations to come in front of the select board to ask for the funding?
We generally have their requests in hand by November 1st. And then for anybody asking for an increase, they come in front of the board in December to answer questions.
Could we potentially unmute Kate and see if she has something to add?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can,
Yes.
Kate.
Hi, good evening. We are on a July 1st to June 30th fiscal year, so our year did just end up. So happy to provide financials as they come through the accounting process. As far as meeting with myself and the board to answer some questions, more than happy. I'm just trying to think. So our board will meet the 4th Monday of this month. So I can, if you can get those questions to me, I can put them out to the president of the board and see if we can get a representative and a mutual time to meet.
Brian, can I ask another question?
Sure, go ahead.
I know, Kate, when we met with you back before town meeting there, you had expressed some interest in having a representative from the select board participate in board meetings, or I think you were working on trying to get a better representation of the community, or I apologize, I don't remember all the details. Did we ever go? Have we made any progress on that? I don't think we have someone from the select board attending those meetings, right? Do we have any non-select board representation? So we haven't taken advantage of that opportunity.
Correct.
So as we go into our discussion later about committee assignments, that may be something, you know, I think as a select board, we could also do a better job of participating and understanding and how the organization works and taking advantage of opportunities that they've suggested to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to have, you know, some representation to show up to the meetings. And as everybody alluded to before, you know, things certainly have changed during these challenging times with this COVID-19. We are at the moment in a mix now of Zoom and hybrid meetings, but absolutely welcome anybody who wants to Zoom in and listen to how things are going. And then hopefully, you know, as things calm down in person, but yeah, I'd love to be able to answer questions. Always look for representation to all the towns we serve.
Had a quick.
Lindsay?
Kate, I'm wondering if you could possibly send a Zoom link for your next meeting to Kathleen that she could then share with us, and we'll see who can make it.
Absolutely. And just to add things to everybody's computer, I believe we use GoToMeetings. So hopefully that won't be a problem.
And your meetings are open to public, Kate?
They are.
Okay.
They are. And the first item agenda always after we call the meeting to order is public comments.
Nick?
Well, you know, whether it's a board member participating or we select somebody, those are all possible avenues to go further down. I think right now we need a good systematic understanding of the organization that we feel even confident to continue the funding, that it, you know, we're confident that it's well run. I don't have any reason to believe it's not, but I don't know that for a fact. And it's again, this is the largest organization, the largest amount of money we give to an organization that's not under Kathleen's oversight. And you know, if a taxpayer asks me and says, is Parks and Rec running well and financially responsible, I can confidently say no. Or sorry, that was a stupid mistake, say yes. And if somebody says that with public safety, I can confidently say yes. as Public Works. But if somebody says with this money they're going to EMS, is it being properly used? I can give a blank stare. I have no idea. I can't give a yes or no. And so, again, it's our obligation to understand the organization well and not try to, at this point, present solutions or directions for us to proceed, but to really make sure that this is a wise investment at the core.
So I think we have a good way to go about this, in that if we can develop a list of questions that any of the board members have, and then get that to Kate, and she can share it with her board, and they can respond, and we can have a couple members meet with them. But also at the same time, if Kate can share with us their schedule and how to connect, then maybe we can sit in and actually observe their board, and some of the questions that we have may be answered just in following their board meeting. I think the timing is good by the sounds, Kate, because if your fiscal year ended the end of June, I would think within the next 30 days you would have some pretty accurate financials that you can share with us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We adopted the budget at the last meeting, but there's still, our bookkeeper is finalizing some of the financials.
Okay.
But yes.
So Brian, to follow up on the timing of the Middlebury Regional EMS meeting, the fourth Monday would be the 24th. So if everyone could get me their questions by Wednesday, the 19th, I could get them compiled and Kate could send them out to her board members in advance of the meeting.
Perfect. Okay, and maybe if you haven't received anything, you bump us all on the 18th, Kathleen. Okay, moving on then.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. Appreciate you joining us. We're going to set the municipal tax rate and downtown improvement district tax rate for FY21. Kathleen?
Just gonna get up the spreadsheet here. So on March 2nd, 2020, voters approved the general fund operating budget of $11,503,680 for FY21, with $7,498.
7 million.
I'm sorry, $7,498,204 to be raised by taxes, with $583,745 to be allocated from the annual local option tax receipts of the Cross Street Bridge to offset spending for capital improvements. Voters also approved the $63,720 for additional funding for Middlebury Regional EMS, and new appropriations of $5,000 for the Turning Point Center of Addison County and the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, resulting in a total amount to be raised of $7,571,924, which you see right here in the first calculation of the tax rate, divided by the grand list of just 9.6 million. Almost $9.7 million, which is up about a little over 1% from the previous fiscal year, which results in a calculated tax rate of 78.21 cents. We have our local agreement, which is for our veterans exemptions, which is a small fraction of a cent, to result in a total municipal tax rate of 78.34 cents. We also have 2 cents on the tax rate for the fire fund, which gives us the total municipal tax rate of 80.34 cents.
Okay. Pleasure of the board on the tax rate, municipal tax rate.
I'll move to set the FY21 municipal tax rate at 0.8034 per $100 of assessed property value.
Second.
Are there questions or comments on that? Hearing none, all in favor of establishing the tax rate as 80.34 cents? Okay,
I also move to set the FY21 downtown improvement district tax rate at 0.0532 per $100 of assessed property value.
Second.
questions or comments on that? All in favor, signify with thumbs up. Okay. Next is an approval of grant agreement with the State of Vermont Department of Housing and Community Development for the Library Window Restoration Project Phase 1. And if you remember, that was briefed to us, and now this is the board's the request of the board to approve the grant agreement that requires a 50-50 match. And if there are no questions on that, then I'll ask for someone to make the motion. Hearing none.
I'll
I can move. I'll
Go
move to
ahead.
authorize the town manager, Kathleen Ramsey, to sign the grant agreement with the Vermont Department of Housing and Community Development for Phase 1 of the Library Historic Window Restoration Project, and further authorize the town to provide matching funds of $5,350.
second.
Moved and seconded. Once again, any other questions or? Okay, all in favor, signify with a thumbs up. All right. Kathleen. FY20 year-end budgets.
So the budget reports, preliminary year-end results are in your packet. As you see, most departments figured ended well within budget for the fiscal year. Our revenues were also very solid in FY20, but we'll be looking closely at the expenses and revenues going ahead, expecting revenues, particularly from the local option tax, to be reduced going forward. Also program revenue from the recreation programs and the library revenue will be down. What else? Not a lot else to add. We should say that some of our maintenance projects were delayed by the pandemic, so we may have to push some of those expenses into FY21. So we may see some overages going forward, but we'll keep you in loop and try to cut back wherever we can to come in on target at the end of FY21 as well.
Looks like you managed it very well, Kathleen, or everybody did. You could really
Everybody does a great job.
You could really see the lack of ability to do things like Dustin's programs really got hammered, didn't they? Was it like 50% of the? It was way off. But
right, and you also see in the recreation department that since we incur most of the expenses, a lot of their expenses in the summer, those were the expenses from the summer of FY, early in this last summer of 2019.
When might we get a sense of when's our next hack where we really see what it's done to our local option tax?
We are expecting the next local option tax report any day now. We usually receive it right around the 12th of August. So as soon as that comes in, I will give you a heads up and do a little analysis of what that might mean going forward.
Okay, thanks. Questions of Kathleen? All right. Next is appointments to select board subcommittees and board representative positions. And there was a list of what we have had. As there, one of the, we have one new member who needs to be placed on, and I talked with Dan. And Dan would be interested in either the infrastructure or health and safety committee as his preferences. Is there anybody who would like to move off from a committee that they currently sit on?
Brian, on the public safety, I would be willing to move to the alternate role. I think that would be a good one for Dan to, if that's what he wants to be on, to be the principal board member on it, with me as the alternate to fill in for the voting role if he's not there.
Okay. So if I'm not seeing anybody, does anybody else have a preference?
Dan, what are you interested on being on? Are you interested in any position that we are on? You're muted.
As I said, I told Brian as either where my most biggest interest would be infrastructure or public health and safety. So that's the two that I was most interested in.
So why don't we go down through the committees then, right from the top of the sheet. The first is expenditure review. Is everybody good with the way we've been doing it since we established having basically a military style duty roster? Does that work for everybody?
Yes, sure does.
Personnel committee. Right now, Victor has volunteered to stay on the personnel committee. Laura was on it and I was on it. Is there anybody who would like to join the personnel committee?
You know, I naively, I can't find anything. What is the personnel committee?
We meet, it's a kind of as needed committee. And the last time we met was talking about when we were doing the, was that when the union, was that the last time we met? But reviewing the town.
The personnel committee reviews requests for new positions or any reclassification of positions, and meets only when needed for those tasks.
We may go a whole year and not meet, Dan, and we've had a couple years where we met more regularly when we were changing the structure. We reviewed that and then made a recommendation to the board.
It sounds like almost a no-brainer one, so
Well, it takes a brain.
Oh, does it? Okay, good. Oh, good. Okay. Okay.
So I'm willing, I'd like to stay on the personnel committee then if, so we need one more person to join Victor and myself.
I'll do it. Although personnel is not my strength, but
Well,
I can write out a meeting.
This isn't paperwork so much that really Kathleen and Chris do a very good job. Chris is really the liaison to that committee and does the humans share the work. And we were looking at a personal policy. That's kind of, that was a big task for that group. Town school committee has not met in a couple of years, I believe, Victor.
At least a year, I think.
I think it's been a little longer than that.
Maybe so.
The last time we met was before the union consolidated, and used to be when we had like the ID4 board. And my understanding at the time from Superintendent Burrows was they couldn't really meet specifically as a unified district with just Middlebury and not offer it, the same kind of meeting with all the other towns. So I'm not sure there's a lot of need for that committee right now.
If the school if that's something that the school's not interested in, is that a committee that what are your thoughts, Kathleen? Is that a committee we should dispense with at this point, or?
Why don't I reach out to the school and report back on that school district?
Yeah, I don't know if it's something we need to specifically dispense with. It's obviously it's not being used much, but it in the past did have a place, and it may have a place in the future. So to at least hold the position open, and even if it doesn't meet, it doesn't meet. But it's there if it's needed to. So I don't see any harm in keeping it, but I would welcome Kathleen review on it.
I agree, Nick. There's no harm in having Victor continue on in case there's something that comes up on short notice.
Yes, that's right.
How do we do that? Because as we get into these uncharted waters, there is a possibility that it would be good to keep the board informed of what's going on, and that might be the liaison position even if it's just for an information sharing.
Well, that's exactly my thought, Brian. Then right now, as we know, the new normal is abnormal, so just keep it there.
Farhad, are you still willing to serve on the Economic Health Committee? And I saw your note to Fred. Did he get back to you as far as a meeting?
Unfortunately, no, he hasn't responded to me. I just wanted to give you some update. Right now, from the roster, you see Steve Boyce, Becky, Scott, and Mike. They're no longer on the committee. So, and I have no idea when we are going to meet again because of the COVID-19. Fred is very busy also, but John Frieden is the only one who tries to reach out and questions why we are not meeting, or we should have this recommendation to the select board. My only thing is whether we make a presentation to the select board or not. I think we should regroup and at least have a sense of where we are going to go with this. This is on a hiatus for what? Last time we met was in November, I think, last year. We haven't met since then. If we have a meeting, then we can decide. I think we should have an update to the select board where we are at so far, what we have done so far, and not knowing what the committee is doing is kind of uncomfortable to. Like Nick has asked me a couple times what's going on, and I have no answer right now.
Well,
Victor?
Well, so many people have gone off, it seems to me it might be well to consider we have to make new appointments to the committee, reconstitute the committee. I mean, I think it seems to be in a limbo right now. So it might be very well just to review. This committee is supposed to be reporting to us on our economic health and the means of improving it. I think that's and the question is it accomplishing that, and does it need additional personnel to do that? So we need the committee. I'm not sure.
Okay. Lindsay?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, did those people officially resign or?
Only Becky did. That was because John kept pressing about why we're not meeting, and she said, my business is I'm in a crisis trying to stay afloat in the business. I don't have time for this, and she resigned. But Steve Boyce and Scott and Mike, they just did not show up for over a year now.
I'm wondering if we could, if Kathleen could, or whoever, could reach out and get a formal one way or the other, and then we could potentially seat other people if there's interest. And maybe.
We had asked Fred last year to reach out to them, and he said he did reach out, and I don't think they have responded to him. That's just my hunch. I don't know for sure.
Nick?
I first of all, I hope Farhad will stay on because he's been doing a great job with it, and it's something that he has an intimate knowledge of this issue. This is an important committee. I admit he and I have talked about it quite a bit, and he shares the same feeling that we're disappointed that we have not seen anything to know where it stands. I think with this particular committee, before we do anything different, I think what's very important is to get an update, whatever condition it is, even if it's a bunch of notes, that we can at least see where they've been, where they're going, what their thought process is. And at that point, decide, I don't want to get rid of it. We definitely need to keep it, but how we formulate it to go on and take on whatever's been done and turn this into greater level of success. So I mean, everybody that was put on there in the first place was put on with a purpose to give a broad variety of skills and expertise and the type of organizations they're with. And so I think we had a really good group, and I want to continue that, but I want to continue something I know what I'm continuing. And so I think if we were to request an update, where are they, then we can more wisely proceed with this. And as Lindsay said, just decide whether, who could be filling in some of the gaps that now seem to have emerged. So I don't want to jump on it. I want this one to succeed, and I've already wanted to see a lot more of it than we haven't, through a variety of factors, not the least of which is this emergency we're in. But at least let's see where we are, and then we can decide how to proceed and be successful with it.
And we actually had tasked Fred with this. And so if Farhad, you're willing to continue on, I think Kathleen, if you could reach out to Fred and just get his thoughts on where they're at and what his plan is.
That's a good idea. I agree.
What's that?
I agree. It's a good idea if Kathleen can reach out and.
And I would also welcome Fred's honest opinion of this. I mean, obviously that guy is we know he's one busy person right now, and he's been made exponentially busier. Is he comfortable even participating as either on the committee or as a chair? And I'm fine either way. If he can, that's great. But if he can't, I fully understand. And again, we can then figure how to move this thing forward. But being in the stagnant position, I mean, everything went stagnant for a while because when this emergency first hit, but now we really have to focus, as we've discussed many times, on how to come out of this thing and do it well. And so this committee is taken on even a higher level of importance in my mind.
Especially as we look at coming out of the bridge construction year and trying to refill some storefronts.
Well, the stars are kind of lining up. The bridge project is getting finished up, and that is fantastic the way it's coming. And you can already, anybody who's walked down there can see what the town is going to look like in that central core. The master plan is emerging along as a visionary document to go forward. And this economic health committee is a big role in that, to help the existing businesses and also to make way for any who may want to come in and be part of this this fine effort we're under. So the timing is right to really make sure that we're getting this thing moving forward properly.
Okay, I think we've got a plan here. Creek Road Task Force. Heather, thoughts on that?
So my suggestion with the Creek Road Task Force is that we wait for some information on the private property owner meetings so that we have a sense on, you know, what kind of direction property owners might be willing or not willing to go there. And then once we have a sense of that, maybe that then is the point where we take a look at, you know, different membership or different expertise, depending on, you know, I hate to make any recommendations to go one way or the other right now without having that piece of the puzzle.
Okay, and that was going to be the individual meetings with the landowners with Kathleen, was that with you and
Peter?
And Heather? Or who?
Just last week, Peter and I sent out invitations to the property owners, and we're looking to set up meetings on September 1st.
Okay. All right.
So I would, if it's okay with the rest of the board, I would just like to see where those meetings, what kind of results we get from those meetings.
Okay, so why don't we continue the task force intact right now without change until we see which we're going to be heading, if we need different organization. Okay. Infrastructure Committee. Thoughts on that, Lindsay? Is this your preference to stay on that, or is there? I didn't hear anything on your preferences. Are you happy with that one? Do you want to stay with that one?
I am happy with it, but I also am willing to rotate off if there's a strong desire from somebody else. I think it's a committee where there's a lot to learn, and I think there's a real benefit to a new person being on there. But I'm fine either way.
I know I've heard interest to learn more about the town. I think he certainly has given 2 potential committees. Dan, your interest is either or both?
Yeah, I think I'm fine. You know, I'd really like to be on it, but Lindsay's already there, so that's fine.
That works for me.
Okay.
Did you want me to still continue? I'd like to still continue, but.
That's not even in question, Heather.
Okay.
We are in the middle of a huge project. I don't think we're going to change that right now. Okay.
The only thing is, I would say with the 2 board members, I would not post one or the other as the chair. I think that the committee should decide who should be the chair, as the public safety did last year among themselves. That would be my only suggestion there.
We have typically let the committee make that choice.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
So.
Yeah.
So if we leave Heather and Lindsay on that committee, then I'm going to recommend we make Dan the primary on the health and safety and Nick the alternate on that. Is everybody good with that?
Yes.
Okay. Farhad, are you willing to continue to serve on Parks and Recreation?
Yes. I'm
Is
good.
everybody good with that? Okay. BMP as well, Farhad?
Yes, I just want to make a comment on BMP. That's one of the most active committees I've seen in town. They don't miss one meeting, and they're always, and I wish when I compare all the committee assignments I have, that's the most prolific committee that I have. I love being on there.
Vote of confidence, Todd. The DIDC. Dan, would you mind doing that?
Sure, I'll do that. That'll be fine. You're putting me in the hen house there. Okay. Yeah.
That was one dastardly laugh there.
Yeah, well, that's.
Well,
I just questioned lots of things about that over the years, so they that's fine.
That's never a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing, right? No.
and because you've been on the outside looking in on that, I think you have a different perspective, so it'll be good for the group.
Okay, all right.
We'll continue to do our rotating third member for the college relations. And MCTV, Farhad has been on that a long time. Do you want to stay on that, Farhad, or are you getting?
No, I like being on there too.
Unless somebody wants to arm wrestle him, we're going to leave him on there. Okay.
He's stronger than I am. I'll lose that one.
Victor, are you good staying on the actor board?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. And Lindsay, has the College Energy Committee started meeting? Have they been meeting?
Yes, I've attended one meeting for the Energy 2028 college town, whatever they're calling it. It was my first meeting, and I'm just getting my bearings, so there's not a whole lot to report at this point, but they'll meet quarterly, and I'll be reporting back to you.
Okay. All right, I think we've got them all covered. Is everybody okay with the assignments?
You missed town energy. The one before that, you missed that.
I missed one. Yeah.
That's Lindsay.
Yeah. Lindsay, are you good with staying on that?
Yeah.
Your group is more energized. It's really, you got a good group going there right now.
Yeah, I'm excited for what we're doing, so I'd love to stay.
Thought you were. Okay, good. All right,
How about the policy review committee, Brian? Are we adding a select board member? We didn't really talk about that one either.
No, we didn't. No, I skipped over it because there wasn't a select board member on that. Do we feel we need to? They're kind of working through the old policies and updating them, bringing them in. Is that something that you feel that you need to put a select board member on?
Well, they're doing a good job, and so my view is if it isn't broken, don't fix it.
Yeah, we didn't discuss it. I didn't necessarily have one thought one way or the other. I just.
Yeah. I think because it's basically a threesome, Gary, Donna, and Chris worked through that, and so you got different viewpoints. I think it's worked pretty well. And unless there's a desire to change it, I'd leave it be. Okay. All right. So if there's no other comments, then we're going to move to check warrants, and Victor has the check warrants.
Okay. Under the authority granted by the Select Board on April 28th, 2020, I have reviewed and approved on behalf of the board total expenditures in the amount of $436,449.87, consisting of $322,651.75 for accounts payable, $117,798.12 for payroll for the period July 29th, 2020 through August 11th, 2020. I move the board's approval for payment of these expenditures.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? All in favor signify with thumbs up. Okay. Kathleen, town manager's report.
Short and sweet tonight. Maybe some people won't think this is so sweet, but with the tax rates being set, we'll be preparing to send out tax bills in mid-October.
Oh, boy.
And the installments will be due November 16th because the 15th is a Sunday, January 15th and March 15th. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Kathleen, when you have a chance, I'd like to see the letter from Judy regarding to the board about racism, and then the letter from Joanne about the bridge abutment mural. Can I see those? Can you
Yes.
just?
I forwarded them out to all the board members yesterday.
Oh, maybe I missed the email. Okay, I'll look in my email then. If I don't see it,
just let me know.
okay. All right. Thank you, Kathleen.
Okay, board member concern. Victor?
Too many to enumerate.
Okay. Farhad?
I don't have any concerns, but as a self-appointed designated town inspector, Nick, can you give us an update on what you see downtown in the construction? You go there very frequently, and I see your background on your tunnel on your profile there. Can you fill us in a little bit, because I haven't been able to go down?
Oh, on my turn when it comes.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Heather?
So while we've been meeting, I've been thinking a little bit about the revolving loan fund money and Kathleen's comment regarding supporting the CUD that we recently agreed to form. And I really like that idea of some of that money going there. I also wanted to maybe add to the list the possibility of considering funding the BMP's plan for supporting downtown businesses during the rail bridge project for maybe next year. You know, given the whole situation with COVID, we couldn't do a lot of the things that we hope to do. And I imagine the funding might not be there to continue that work next year when they could maybe use it. So maybe another alternative to consider is funding those initiatives that we couldn't do this year. So those were just things I thought of as we were continuing our meeting.
Okay. Nick?
Well, as you can see from my broadcast studio in the background, it's here in the tunnel. It's progressing. To answer Fahad's question, my observation incredibly well, and the chance I've had to be down there. I do like to get there on a regular basis and interact to see where it is. The vast majority of the concrete pieces are in. The tunnel through town is complete. It is one tall thing. They're in the process of water tightening it, sealing it in. The ballast for the railway track is being put down through there. You'll see a lot of the fill and grading now, so you can really start to get a good view of what the contour of that Triangle Park is going to look like. And I look back and I think about that wasn't even one of the original elements of the project, but what a missed opportunity we would have had if we didn't do that, because it's really spectacular. it's also been fascinating because it has turned into a social scene in town. You go on a Saturday evening and there are people lined up watching the cranes work and all the machines happen. And it's been a really nice way for people to interact. And they're all doing their social distancing and wearing their masks during this project. So it's really great. We're fortunate to have it underway and fortunate that I guess we're about almost halfway through it, and it's gonna be really nice. So that's why I really personally keep trying to think of how do we then advance the town and what do we do to think better as we come out of the bridge project and the post-COVID. So I'm really eager to see what ideas come out of that. But other than that, I guess the one question I had is I'm trying to recall what our policy is on political signs, because as I recall, you have to be there holding the sign if you're the candidate, and these things have popped up all over the place like dandelions in the spring. And so, you know, is there a way we can get the word out to the candidates? You can't do that.
Nick, there are state statutes on political signs in the right of way, and we have had some conversation with our zoning enforcement staff about.
Okay, thank you. Nothing else.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Lindsay?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention, along with the Real Bridge project, that, you know, initially I had gotten a lot of a little bit of flurry of anxiety, you know, of people trying to navigate downtown. But lately, any comment that's been made to me has been totally positive. I think people are really impressed with the way the project is going now that we're finally here. And people keep saying, I thought it was going to be worse. So I think that says a lot about Kubricki. It says a lot about the work Jim's been doing and the whole town. So kudos to everyone. And then the other thing I've just been thinking, and I know that Chief Hanley does this to a certain extent, but I would really love to get an update from some of the organizations that are providing essential services to maybe our most vulnerable. You know, you read in the paper how a bunch of people are about to lose their housing, and I'd really love to know if that's affecting our town or not. So I don't know the best way to reach out to them, but I would just love to hear, you know, what's the magnitude of the damage, and for how long do they think, you know, do they anticipate that added need? You know, I don't want most vulnerable people to get lost in the shuffle as we talk about, you know, downtown revitalization and businesses.
Lindsay, I have been meeting with the Addison County Recovery Team. That includes the Chamber, the Addison County Community Trust, which is a housing group, childcare representatives, low-income advocates. And I think that's a great idea to try to get something together for policymakers.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good idea. Dan?
Yeah, to add a little bit to Lindsay, I know I just was reading before the meeting started for our meeting tomorrow night. I know the Charter House Coalition is going through a lot of struggles with limitations because of the virus for housing homeless families, which they typically get 5, and then the limits are, and so there's an overabundance of people that are struggling with that now and are getting put up in hotels, and it'd be interesting to hear about that also. To add to Nick's Saturday night stories, watching Michelle and I go down to watch the bridge work a lot, and we have 5 rooms that have construction workers on there, and Michelle takes breakfast down to them every morning at 6:30 before they're leaving, or 7:30 when they're coming back, and they get lots of cookies and muffins and everything. So when Michelle and I go there, there's guys that'll look up from the bottom of the tunnel or on the other side and wave to her. So she has a bunch of guys that recognize her. So it's fun. It's fun.
She's a rock star.
Yeah, she's a rock star.
I'm the one cooking I was there the other day when it happened, and I thought I was standing next to the Prime Minister. The way.
Yep. It's the messenger. There's somebody else, I cook it lots of times and she's the messenger, so she gets all the credit. So she's a lot warmer than I am too, so it's okay.
Okay. I feel like there's a number of things that, there's so many issues going on. Would it be beneficial for us to do a mid-year kind of prioritization process? Just to look at all of there's a number of issues that have been added since we did that and made our prioritizations. And yeah, they're all important. Just we do have limited staff resources, and I've been thinking about it. Each one of them we want to tackle, but setting how we tackle that, what are our objectives, and do we, we don't want to create a million committees and task force, but there are limitations to what our staff can do as well. So, and when I talk about that, it's, how do we focus on coming out of the bridge? So the economic side, and as Farhad has attested, that we're really not doing much there right now. The Black Lives Matter movement that we are trying to figure out how does the town engage, and we get a number of letters, and we want to be doing the right thing, but we also are in the middle of the town's biggest project it's ever had, which is kind of all encompassing for a lot of our staff, and all during the middle of COVID. So I don't know. I just wondering if it would be beneficial for us to do a short just prioritization and kind of set goals on some of these things, and because some of them we may just decide that that's next year's project. As important as good as everything is, or do we want to set up a separate committee and just get it off from Kathleen's plate? So, I don't know, any thoughts on that, Nick?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, Brian. When we set the priorities at the beginning of the year, it was a different world, and we had good intentions of what we were doing, but then we got hit with this giant bus, and it's changed things around. And I really would like to know how staff is doing with this, and I think we should just all plan a mid-year prioritization session just to catch up and see where it is and find out what's realistic to continue versus what we need to change. It's just events happen, and one of the roles we have is be able to adjust as necessary. So I think that's a very good idea. I would support that.
Would you all be willing to do like an hour Zoom just to discuss that one topic and get them all?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, I'll work with Kathleen and we'll come up with a
Date and time.
With a date and time and the list. Okay. All right, a lot of good discussion tonight. Appreciate everybody's involvement. I like this new format. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So much easier than trying to find all the, on a vote, you're trying to find amongst 20 faces, the 9 faces that.
Well, I'm glad that Chris is here to hear that. He did all the heavy lifting with setting up the new webinar platform.
Okay.
That's good.
It does, works well.
Good job, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll seek a motion to adjourn then.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, have a good evening, everyone.
Have a good
Good
night.
night, everybody.